Hi, folks. Hi, dads, mums, families listening. Welcome to the Stress-Free Dads podcast. We got a great episode for you here today, and a very special person to share with us some really important information right now, and in a subject area that over the last 6 years has just increased tenfold in terms of the interest and awareness about that particular subject. So it's actually in a subject area of imposter syndrome, just to name it. And every time I mention that, I've done a lot of my own emotional, spiritual work on the inside. And even now that subject comes up and it just sends a, a a mild set of shivers and some goosebumps along with it, because it's a big and can be challenging subject. And Tara is going to give us a beautiful insight into that world, and how we can unmask, essentially. So just to say hi, Tara. Good morning.
Hi,
How are
Ben.
you? Hi.
Good. Good morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing, Ben?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, the sun's out, Tara. Spring, smell spring, and yeah, what better time to get to work than inviting you here today? So just a heads up about Tara. Her subjects of expertise are obviously imposter syndrome, leadership and entrepreneurship, neuroscience and high performance, stress responses, and mental well-being, which are really important for us here. And she's here to share all about imposter syndrome and how we can just learn what the heck that is, and are we people that would be categorized as having imposter syndrome, and how to not be overstressed by that, and how to manage it effectively, let's say. So Tara herself is an Amazon #1 bestseller. Not everyone can say that. That's so very cool. She has a PhD in engineering. I can't say that, only a degree in engineering. So a doctor of engineering. How cool. She has built and sold her own business, so didn't get stuck in academia. She's been a holistic therapist and coach since 2000. And now she helps C-suite executives to eliminate imposter syndrome. And my first brush with imposter syndrome was particularly in the corporate world, where it perhaps shows up a little bit more often. Definitely resonate with that idea of feeling like some kind of fraud doing my work, although I was trained for it. So I'm just really excited to have Tara here today. And based on that list, and that's just a snapshot of Tara's list, this lady's absolutely on fire right now, and we have the privilege of her time here to unmask us, help us become more real, and to de-stress. So hey, Tara, welcome.
Thank you.
What a
Thank
list
you,
that
Ben.
is. What a list that is. So
Yes.
Tara, can you just give us a little whistle stop tour of Tara history? Just where are you now, even geographically? Roughly how do we get here, to just kick us off?
Okay. Well, I'm dialing in from Cheltenham in the
Mm-hmm.
UK, and let me see. So if I go all the way back, I started off in engineering, as you mentioned, but only because my family wouldn't let me be a psychologist, which is what I really wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
10 years in engineering, and I finally got into, back into what I wanted to do. So I trained as a holistic therapist, as you say, starting from 2000, so 21 years ago now. And I've worked as a holistic therapist and coach in all that time. 7 years ago, I trained as a coach in to help people develop a sense of unconditional worth, which has been identified as one of the key causes of happiness in people's lives. And then 5 years ago, I started specializing in imposter syndrome, because I could see that there was such a clear link between imposter syndrome and unconditional worth. In fact, imposter syndrome is a symptom of the belief that we're not quite good enough. And then I've also spent 2 years as a neurofeedback trainer, which is in neuroscience, basically putting electrodes on people's heads and measuring their brain waves as they're going through a very powerful letting go process. So I've studied a lot of neuroscience in the last few years, and that's allowed me to take kind of like a general, 2-year coaching journey with people and condense it into a very focused 8-week program to get rid of imposter syndrome. And that's what I'm really excited about.
I resonate so strongly with that wound of we're not quite good enough yet. And there might be a whole bunch of people listening and they don't resonate with that at all. And it goes straight over their head. And that's okay, right? There's still so much that they can learn from the information you're going to share with us today. Um, the pain that comes with that, the almost the stress that comes with that. Nothing I ever do is good enough, as a description of my inner world, can lead to just this hopeless life experience, or what feels like hopeless, and it's bound by that wound of some message somewhere that says you're not enough as you are, and that can just wreak havoc with our lives, right? So you're going straight for the meat here. You're going straight for the treatment of the root cause. And as you mentioned, imposter syndrome is a very, might not be obvious to everyone, symptom of that root cause, Tara. So
Mhm.
what is imposter syndrome?
Yes, good question. So, imposter syndrome is the secret feeling of being a fraud when you're not, and the fear of being found out. And just in terms of perspective, 70%, that's 7 out of 10 high achievers, experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. The reason, though, that we don't hear about it so much is because everybody thinks it's them, it's just them, and it's some kind of character defect or flaw or a weakness. So they don't talk about it. Then everyone keeps it a secret. So when it does strike, people think it's just me, and it all makes it worse. So this is one of the reasons I'm delighted to be talking to you about this, talking to all of your listeners, because we need to be aware of it. That helps to know this, not just you.
It creates itself an incubator for the shame of having this horrible feeling about who I am. Imposter syndrome just sitting right on top of that. I won't share it with anyone. How can I possibly share that with somebody? It's just me. So feeding that beast of isolate yourself, never share the truth. People have expectations of you. Take the example of the C-suite executive. You've climbed up the chain and now you've worked your butt off to get all the way up that corporate ladder, and you're sat at the top of the ladder and you feel like this whopping great big fraud for being there. What a conflict, what an inner contradiction, and how hard that is to hold those two, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is, because it feels like you've suddenly lost your confidence. Right?
Mm.
So, but it's not a lack of confidence. So generally, like you said earlier, I have the qualifications, right? You know that you can do the job, but you're just not feeling it on the inside, and that that gap, that is like, it's like a puzzle for the mind, right? And the mind doesn't like puzzles; it likes solving puzzles.
Mm.
So, and the only solution, or the easiest solution that the mind comes up with, is it must be me. There must be something wrong with me. I must not be good enough. And that seems to resolve it, but that just locks it in place. Yeah.
And it's so this stuff sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, because it's such a simplistic, almost childlike conclusion. But we buy into that in our own inner thought, inner world, and inner thinkings. I've referenced imposter syndrome with the C-suite executive, Tara. Imposter syndrome affects people right across the board. So feel like an imposter in my own home with my own family, to imposter in my business, to imposter when I'm sat in front of my accountant, to not that corporate executives are any harder than anybody, but it's right across. Feel like a fraud when I show up for rugby practice on a Saturday morning. Oh, right.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. You see, imposter syndrome, it comes and goes. and it gets triggered by this combination of high challenge and low support. So you see, any time that you put yourself in a situation where you have both high challenge, often something new to do, something big to do, something challenging, and you don't have enough support, then those feelings of, I'm not sure I can do this, I'm not quite good enough, even though I might have done it 100 times, maybe I can't do it 101, maybe this time they're going to find me out, and then disaster.
Yeah, you've just that was going to be my next question. What are the likely consequences of somebody living that way? Life is highly challenging. The truth of it is, we're absolutely not in control of life. So just a general, fundamentally straightforward life offers high challenges. And I imagine that the notion of low support resonates with so many people right now. And so what are the typical consequences or experiences that someone is having in that scenario, Tara?
Well, when you have imposter syndrome, when you're feeling not good enough, you feel isolated because it's the secrecy part. It can feel overwhelming. You might have high degrees of anxiety because you're worried people are going to find you out, or you're not sure if you can actually do what you want. And then there's a whole bunch of different behaviors that then come out of that. And it's all this massive amount of stress, so it's distracting. So because you're worrying about what people are thinking about you, you're not just getting on with it, so it's distracting. You can't switch off from if it's about work in the evening, so as a dad you're not as present for your kids, or you're spending so much time being a perfectionist at work, over preparing, that you spend too long at work, that you miss out on some of your kids time with them, or your weekends might be taken up. And also, because there's that level of anxiety and stress, you're less resilient, which means things will get you annoyed more. So you're not going to be the kind of loving, supportive dad that you want to be, and you can be, because you're so physiologically stressed. Yeah, you're in a fight, flight, and freeze mode the whole time.
This is so helpful to and hey, we work with people here too. That topic of it must be me, that conclusion is fatal, really. And it's not accurate either. It's a false conclusion. And this stuff is treatable, right? That's where we're gonna lead towards in this episode here. So Tara, did you actually have imposter syndrome?
Yes, I did then. but like a lot of people, I didn't recognize it as what it was. And I only actually realized it when I was doing research for my book. and I thought, oh, have I? Oh, yes, I have. So here's what happened for me. So sometimes one of the high challenge triggers can be a particular activity. Like you do fine in a whole bunch of things, but it's just one thing that it just gets to you if you're not doing it perfectly. And for me, that was leadership. So I can actually trace this back to when I was in the Girl Guides and I got made a patrol leader. And I had to, tell the girls in my patrol what to do. And the style of leadership that had been modeled in my home was this command and control style, which I didn't like. And that was reinforced at the Girls Guides because they were expecting me to do that. And so I tried it. I didn't like it. It didn't fit. I didn't do a good job. The girls, probably because I wasn't happy with it, weren't happy with it either. And I felt like an awful person, and I felt terrible. So my assumption is it must be me, not, oh, nobody's taught me a really good role model for leadership, right? It must be me. So then when I graduated from my engineering program, I applied to General Electric, which is a big multinational firm, and applied as a graduate trainee. So they put me through all these tests and they offered me a job, but a fast track management trainee. And my immediate response was no. And I couldn't have even put it in those words at the time. I just knew that I didn't want to do that. I told myself that that must be boring. So I didn't want to do that. And I saw a friend of mine from college, and he was just applying for a PhD. And I thought, oh, well, if he can do that, so can I. So that's how I got my PhD in engineering, because of my imposter syndrome. Yeah.
How fascinating. Um, I, a number of different subjects hop up here. People decide to start a family, and that sounds like a great idea, and then they realize it wasn't such a great idea because it's so darn hard. Um, and then the notion of, as a father, being the leader of your family is not just a father's job. It's a joint job, but not in every case, because there will be some single parents listening in here. So the idea of leadership in your family, not just leadership in the corporate environment, is just as likely a space where imposter syndrome can be bred, because it just reflecting on it now, it's a conversation I have with men a lot about how to lead in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole skill set to develop and learn and grow into. Yet we just, because we've had children and we're human beings and we have blood in our bodies, we think we should just know how to do that. So we sell ourselves on all of these shoulds, and again just breeds that. But deep down, you know that you're actually not very good at it and need some support. Like you said, that is a high challenge, could be low
Mm-hmm.
support environment, because the
Yeah.
world is rife with judgments. You just got to open social media to find judgments around that. I should be doing
Yeah.
this, should be doing that. So culturally, we live in this environment that eats, sleeps, and breathes encouragement of imposter syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, absolutely. And one of the things about parenting, I think, is a really important point. We go through our schooling, and just like I wasn't taught, a good style of leadership that worked for me, very few people are taught parenting skills. Very few people are taught money management skills. And then you get to an adult, you kind of kicked out, there you go, get on with it. And you're expected to be good at it, and you've never even learned the skill. So, yeah, of course. And as you say, you're expected to, right? And everyone expects you to be a good dad. Or they'll tell you, oh, you're a great dad. And you'll think, yeah, but you don't know what you don't know how I shouted this morning, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, precisely. And so often, I guess I'm coming to a place where I'm accepting it a little bit more, but so often I'm going through experiences with my family, being the parent, and seeing that the demands that the kids have of me to be parent all the time. They always want me to be dad. There's never an off moment. And sometimes, especially when we're outdoors, I'm sat there having the experience myself, and I just ponder, I'm 38. I've got my oldest child is 8 and almost 9, youngest 3. I'm an adult, I'm a grown up, and I still feel like this little boy that
Mm-hmm.
forgets to tie his shoes sometimes. um and I'm learning how to hold that, let's say, and not judge it. But just in that example, there's an opportunity for that again, that untethered, that could lead into, what's wrong with you, there's something wrong with you, it must just be you, right,
Mm-hmm.
Tara?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So what inspired you to dive into being an expert in imposter syndrome?
Um, well, as so 7 years ago, I trained as a coach in unconditional worth. Fabulous work, really life changing, getting the deep core belief of what makes people happy and unhappy.
Hmm.
Fantastic. And then I started to hear about imposter syndrome. And when I looked into it, it was just so clear that the link between unconditional worth, or lack of unconditional worth, and imposter syndrome is so clear that the root cause of imposter syndrome is that belief, the belief that I'm not quite good enough, belief that my worth is conditional, I am what I do. If I do something good, I am good. I do something bad, I am bad. It's an identity level belief. It's very deep. Most people are not even conscious that, as you said earlier, they're not even thinking in that way. They're not conscious of it. And all they see are the symptoms. With imposter syndrome, there's a number of different symptoms. Actually, I'll share that with you.
Yes,
That's okay.
please. Please, yes.
Yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube, here you get to the screen, but I'll read it out for everyone. So there's two sets of imposter syndrome behaviors. Remember, these are the symptoms. One of them is feeling you're not quite good enough, trying to be good enough. And the other part is that you're not feeling quite good enough, so you try and hide so nobody will find you out. And so the ones in red, the hiding ones are like procrastinating, right? So if you don't quite do your best job, then nobody can catch you out, right? Because it's not your best. Deflecting praise, so never accepting praise, always saying, "Oh, I just got lucky. It wasn't me. Good timing. The stars were aligned."
This old thing. I've
Yeah,
just thrown this on.
exactly. Had it for years. Yeah. Avoiding, that's what I was doing. So I just didn't go for that job that would have been challenging for me. Hiding is not speaking up, not sharing your opinion, not putting forward the stuff that you have that's valuable. Lying is kind of a reflexive, actually sometimes blaming other people so that you don't get caught out. No, it wasn't me. And then the secrecy part we mentioned earlier. So all of that is kind of knee-jerk response that we have to try and not get caught. So the other part of it, to try and be good enough, we compare ourselves to other people. So talk about dads. Everyone else seems to be a brilliant dad. What's going on? It must be something wrong with me. I mean, you compare how people are looking on the outside to how you're feeling on the inside. So this is the, swans swimming upstream kind of thing, these graceful, elegant, smooth swimming, and underneath they're paddling. We can only feel our own paddles, so we think we're the only ones paddling. It's not accurate, of course. The other part is perfectionism. So nothing's good enough, trying to make yourself good enough. So you try and work harder and harder and harder to be perfectionist. I know, for example, one dad who, if he couldn't give his kids the perfect day out, wouldn't take them out at all. So you can see how painful that becomes. What another is having enough. Very often in the corporate world, this is a sense of you don't have quite enough qualifications. If I get one more qualification, then I'll finally feel like I've earned this position, I've earned this role. And then finally pushing through, which is that sense of this is me. I'm just going to have to force my way through it because I don't know any other way. And so that causes, stress. It causes exhaustion, tiredness, burnout. You don't have energy for yourself, for your creativity, for your family.
That is a huge list that I imagine, even regardless of what side you feel you're on of those two, both two sides of the same coin, essentially. And I imagine everybody listening has done at least one of those, if not more. And how we manage that is we just rationalize it away and talk away. We don't even really see it as a problem. We just get your head down and get on with it,
Yeah.
So this is on topic, Tara. So the big question that came to me: so what if you're a fake, right? Why can't we look at this? So what? You're a fake. You don't know everything. I don't need to know everything all the time. So what? You need some leadership training. So what? You lied a little bit here and there to move up the corporate ladder. So what if you get caught out not knowing exactly how to do your job 100% perfectly all the time? I know that level of rationalization just does not work. But but please, can you respond to that? Like, why is this such an issue? Why can't we just go, so what?
Because the underlying fear is that we're not good enough.
Yes.
So if we get caught out in anything, it's like it's proof that we're not good enough. That's why the perfectionism, if I'm not perfect, it's proof that I'm not good enough. It's proof about my worst fear is that I'm inherently unworthy, unlovable. And when we get back to this, taps into something really primal. When we were caveman societies, if we were thrown out of the group, if we were rejected, we would die, because we could not survive by ourselves for very long. And so it's a very primal fear to fear that kind of rejection. So that's why we want to feel loved and cared for, appreciated and accepted for who we are. Even a baby, when a baby's born, is completely dependent. Same thing. If it gets rejected, not cared for, it is going to die. So it taps into that very primal thing. And all we're seeing is the surface, flotsam and jetsam, right? We're just seeing the tendency to be a perfectionist, right? We're not seeing the reason why we're being perfectionist, because we're trying desperately to feel like we're good enough. And so you can't address it at the level of perfectionism, procrastination, because that's not where the issue is. The issue is at that deep belief level.
What a brilliant answer. Essentially, neurologically, psychologically, I'm hardwired to avoid that, because you named it as evidence. So to be able to say whatever, I would simultaneously have to be able to accept that I am, that I could, and accept and be okay with the thought of me being rejected, being an imposter in my tribe, leading to perhaps or almost certainly my own death. And I've read exactly the same science and accounts about um, the most painful punishment for a wrongdoing in certain cultural tribes worldwide is you are extradited, excluded from the tribe, and that it's certain death for that person. Just not having the connection of their people leads to actual death. So there's a hard wiring in me for life. So it's an odd way that I almost manage that. And one of the ways I do it is to not admit to anybody that I'm a darn right imposter, which sounds crazy, Tara, doesn't it? Doesn't that whole thing sound nuts? The whole system is insanity, actually.
It's a rationality based on a false belief. Let's put it that way, right? So the fact is, you're not an imposter, right? You are good enough. And yeah, you might make some mistakes here and there, but you are good enough. So it's more about not just, it's not getting comfortable with being a fraud, but it's getting comfortable with being able to make mistakes, be human, be real. And in order to do that, you have to address that underlying belief. You have to address it.
And that just beautifully brings us on to the question, Tara. Hopefully this has rung some bells for some people, that there is work to do, just to phrase it that way. What can we do to let go of, to reduce this sense of imposter, this fraud, fake, the mask that we have to maintain at all times, and how we identify with being an imposter? How can we improve that?
Right. Well, so the very first part is that a bit of just that rational understanding that it isn't just you, right? This is very human position. 70% of people are aware of it, right? The other 30% can be in denial, completely unaware, or just avoiding any situation that might trigger it. So I've seen research that only about 6 people in 10,000 actually grow up without a sense that they're not good enough, that their worth is unconditional. 6 in 10,000.
Wow.
Approximately. So this is a much bigger issue. So the very first is it's not you, right? And that list that I gave of the imposter syndrome behaviors, when you can see them as the symptoms, then you've got a little bit of, detachment. You don't have to go into that shame or blaming yourself or judging yourself. It's okay. Look, these are indications that I'm currently under stress, a situation of high challenge and low support. And then when you recognize that you're under stress, one of the things you can do is get some support. Now, support isn't necessarily going along to a counsellor and pouring your heart out or anything like that. It's not standing up on a street corner and announcing to everyone that you feel like a fraud. We're not talking about things like that. We're talking more about things like just getting these very basic stress management things. I mean, like people who get a gardener in to come cut the lawn.
Mm.
And then the weekend doesn't have that task hanging over your head when you're exhausted and need to catch up. So this is in situations where you're in high challenge. So all the support you can get, going out kayaking with your mates, for example, time off, or taking the family out for a picnic rather than rushing around doing all sorts of chores, stuff like that that just give you that space to relax a little bit more, that kind of support.
Yeah, that's so helpful. You're making gently connecting the dots for imposter syndrome and relieving imposter syndrome and relieving stress, and some of the antidotes sounds quite similar. So just always just letting go of always wanting your kids to have this perfect experience each and every day. And you know what, I can't be bothered to make the perfect picnic with the perfect sandwiches, and be weighing up which is the most nutritious fizzy drink to be putting in the lunch bag today. Is it sod it, we're going to buy some naff food. We're not going to blow a lot of money on it, but I'm just going to spare myself the arduous task of having to be perfect in that small example, just one, and that makes a difference to my whole week. I'm just going to give that up once today, and we're just going to spend 12, 14, 15 pounds on eating out just because it's easier and less stressful for me.
Yes.
And I'm not shouting at the kids to be quiet and go and do this and that whilst I'm preparing lunch. That's such a help to just almost be given permission to make
Yes.
a simple, stress-free choice.
Yes, this is what psychologists call gradual exposure. So this is what you can do for any of those symptoms. Just do a little bit of not being perfect today, a little bit of you know speaking up when you usually don't, things like that. um, and do it so not to trigger yourself into a massive fight, flight, freeze, dramatic neurophysiological response, stress response, but do it gradually, and that can help. So that can help kind of manage those symptoms. But really what it comes down to in terms of imposter syndrome is you really need to address that belief. That's what's going to make it go away. So everything else is managing it. To fix the problem, you've got to go in deep.
Which can be terrifying. There's a way to live life where I tolerate all of that, the lists that you brought up for us. um and essentially you and I do very similar work in that what we're doing is bringing people face to face with addressing that wound, healing that wound, taking responsibility for that wound, which is a really hard way to hear it, because if you don't, I mean, that's okay, no judgment here. Yet if you don't see the whole picture, you're simply putting plasters on bigger problems, and eventually
Yeah.
that plaster will deteriorate and it will start to bleed again. So, and at the very same time, back to your point a moment ago, Tara, 0.5% of a step towards a, an increased understanding of this is a positive and beneficial step. You don't need to just dive in there, go for the whole thing if you're just not quite ready. And to be honest, in my experience and in my own experience, I wasn't quite ready to do that. This was revealed one plaster at a time, one little step at a time. So can you please give us top 2 steps for helping men or women reduce stress and increase well-being in the workplace or at home? And you've already given us one. I see it as just picking a thing to not be so perfect at this week, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good one. The other is kind of a self-awareness thing. Is notice when you are stressed. So we've got the stress responses of fight, flight, and freeze. That's your body responding to the current situation as if there's a tiger in the room, right? As if there's
Mm,
this massive danger just about to attack you, life-threatening stuff. And when you're in that state, you are distracted, you can't think so clearly, your IQ drops by 13 points, right? You
mm,
don't have emotional resilience, so things will trigger you, and you're anxious, you're not calm, you're not focused. So if you find yourself in that state, then there are things that you can do just to calm yourself physiologically. So the fight or flight, that's to defend or run away. The muscles, the blood flows going to your muscles to get you ready for that. So what you can do is shake your hands out, shake your legs out till you're breathless, right?
mm,
And what you're doing is you're shaking the stress hormones basically out of where they've gone to the muscles and getting them back to the liver and process, so you can calm down. Once you've done that shaking, then you can do some deep breathing,
mm,
and then you'll feel calmer. So, and then everything that you do in terms of, try not to be such a perfectionist, for example, is going to be easier because you've got to be in that calm state. You can't do it when you're in that stress state. And then the other state is the freeze state, and this is where you're just stuck, petrified, deer in the headlights, just can't move, can't seem to do anything, frozen solid. And then what you do there is, again, you start moving your body really, not fast, but slow. So go out for a slow, gentle walk, do some slow stretching, something like that. Just get the system moving. Basically, you're telling your body, hey, it's safe for me to just walk around. I don't have to run anywhere. I don't have to play dead, right? And then do some deep breathing as well. So all of that is just the very first step. And then when you're calm again, then you can look at the next steps.
mm. I just really enjoy the way you put this, the way you say it and talk about it. Just helps lead me, helps me feel not that I don't have to be the leader. Lead me to a place of, there's no hurry. If you've listened to anything that's been shared here, and it's just resonated with you, hey, it's okay. There are people that understand this stuff, understand you. It's not just you, and it's a really good thing if some chains have been jangled here, because it might be time for you to let go of a whole bunch of stuff and to go and cut through those chains. And you don't need to cut through all of them at once and find something else to do a perfect job of.
Yeah, and I think this is really important because, when we think it's just us, we think it's a personality flaw or weakness or something like that, there's no solution to it, right? We have this identity of this is who I am and I hate it. What we're talking about today is, first, it's not who you are,
Mm,
and second, there is something you can do about it, right?
mm,
There are ways to change that underlying belief. And really, this is the essence of my work. It's a program that takes people through changing that belief in a way that, doesn't leave them clinging to the ceiling like a cat. Yeah.
Tara, can you 2 more questions for you? One, um if someone is listening to this and they say, I absolutely get it, you guys. my partner really needs to hear this because he or she really suffers from imposter syndrome.
Right.
Not, it's not. I didn't hear any of that from me, but I know my partner really needs to listen to this. What? How would? Because I hear that a lot too. How would you respond to that perspective?
That's such a good point, because a lot of people can see what you've got to understand with imposter syndrome is that people are afraid of others finding out.
Hmm.
So many people my clients have talked to haven't even told their spouse, whether their spouse is aware of it or not, whether
Hmm.
their partners are aware of it. You know, they haven't said it. So it can be quite challenging for somebody to come up to you and say, hey, clearly you've got imposter syndrome, you need to go and talk to Tara, right? Yeah. So I don't recommend that people do that. um, you can certainly say, hey, I heard this really good podcast. There's this Ben guy, he does this amazing stress-free dads podcast. You got, have a listen to it. Yeah. Leave it for them to discover. And the other part of it is, to make any kind of change, you have to be motivated to make that change. And I can't do it for you. There's an April Fool's joke, right? Just this month, from a company, and they showed um, vaccine bottles for imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
So it's very, very 2021, playing on the vaccines and all of that. But I can't do that, right? I can't come along, give you a jab, and you not have an input, right? It is
Hmm.
work, as you've suggested, to do this, and people have to be ready to do that and willing to do that. And part of that is accepting or understanding that it's not them. So it's not something you can really push someone into, but when you are motivated to do it and you know that there's a solution, then the freedom starts from that point, even before you've done it.
Just a note that as you were sharing that with us, some people might make the excuse of listening into this. And as I build you at the beginning, I build BUILD people in a way to help you listen at the right level for how powerful some of the content that is shared here is. And so it would be an excuse to say, Tara's a doctor of engineering. She's had her own business and sold it. Tara's done this, Tara's done that. So, hey, I just don't qualify. What chance have I got? And what you've gently done here is share with us some really simple steps of how we can make inroads towards improving that. And so, can you share with us, Tara, how we could, how we can find more about you, how we can find out more about imposter syndrome? Where do we go if this is just plenty of meat on the bone for us, but we want more?
Yeah, sure. Well, you can. I post mostly on social media, on LinkedIn, so you can find
Mhm.
me Tara-Halliday-PhD, and almost all of my posts are about imposter syndrome, so articles and things there. My program is an 8-week program. I've got a one-to-one program that I work with executives, and a group program that I'm starting up this summer. That's called Inner Success, doing what it says on the tin, getting that feeling of inner success. My company is called Complete Success because that's the outer and the inner together. And so my website is completesuccess.co.uk. And you can email me, tara@completesuccess.co.uk.
I will put all of that for if you're anything like me. I like to just go through the bio and click a whole bunch of stuff. So
Yeah.
I'll put that in there for the listeners.
Yeah. And there's one more thing on there. I do have, in terms of the links, I've just thought about it. I've got a quiz, imposter syndrome quiz. So if you're not sure if you've got imposter syndrome or not, take the quiz. It's free, 20 questions, and it'll give you a score. And then you've got a little bit more reinforcement if you're suspecting that you've got imposter syndrome, to know exactly where you stand.
Perfect. Tara, I haven't cleared this with you. Do you have a physical copy of your book that you'd be willing to post to the winner of some kind of competition?
Yes, what a lovely idea. Absolutely.
That will pay for the postage, so you don't have to. Um, And so if you direct message us at the Marriage People Facebook page, if you direct message me or Ben or Kerry Lepier before the 25th of April, that should give you plenty of time. We will pick a winner and give Tara your details. So if you could give us your postal address as well in your competition entry, we'll draw a winner and post that out to you. And what a treat that would be.
Brilliant. Yes.
Thank you, Tara. That if you said no, that would have been really funny.
Well, yeah, that would be. It's a lovely idea. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, you could have felt really mean then and said, "No, Ben, actually, I don't want to do that." Okay. Tara, thanks so much for your time. That's been absolutely brilliant. Have you got any last words of encouragement for the listeners and for me here?
I would just say, I say this about leadership. You could say it about life. It doesn't have to be so hard. Right? You weren't born with imposter syndrome, so why should you have to live with it?
Love that. And if we're not born with it, we've learned it, and then we can just go unlearn it, but we have to know how. So yeah, thanks so much, Tara. Have a great day. Good luck, lovely. Thanks, listeners.
Thanks a
See you,
lot,
darling.
Ben.
Bye-bye.
Bye.